Hi, it's me, Ingrid INFP, and I'm going to talk about why I hate Fahrenheit 451. I've only read 50 pages out of 150 pages, and usually I give books the benefit of the doubt of reading at least 100 pages before I give up, but I'm going to have to not finish this book. I cannot get past page 53. And mostly it's the bad writing. And yeah, I loved 1984, for example. Gave it 5 stars. Fahrenheit 451. I would give it 1 star, but I'm going to be charitable and give it 2 stars. I don't really know. I would like to give it 0 stars, but I'm sure that I'm missing something. A lot of people have written lovely reviews on Goodreads and everywhere else because this is a classic. But yeah, I don't know why I dislike this book so much despite it being loved by so many people and English teachers and all sorts of people. So the premise of this book, it's a man, he works as a firefighter, but in this world is a dystopian future. This book was written in 1951, so he's talking about kind of our time. In this dystopian future, firefighters are actually not needed because, because houses are fireproof. And so instead, firefighters actually burn books. That's their job. And so the main character is one of those, and his wife is basically a zombie because she's been alienated from humanity through the TV, pretty much, and through because psychiatric medicines, I guess. I think that there are certain good points, and I think that there are many bad points. So we're going to go through a little bit of the good points, and then we'll go through the bad points. And keep in mind, I haven't read the whole book, but I cannot go further. I cannot read more of this, even though I have tried. So let's see. I think that it is a good representation of the age of distractibility. You know, like we live in an era where it is difficult to concentrate, and I think that for somebody writing this in 1951, I think, that is quite interesting that he would include such a worry for us, the people of the future. And this is actually a prediction that came true. It is difficult for us nowadays to focus on anything longer than like a minute. Some things like Instagram Reels, you can't focus more than maybe 15 to 30 seconds, TikTok, long form video content like my videos are, my videos aren't very interesting, but some very interesting videos that are 30 minutes long, nobody would watch them, even if they're interesting. Things that are too long are not worth your focus and energy, and yeah, it's distractibility. And that leads to, a lack of critical thinking, a lot of problems with concentration, and problems with, a lot of things, our media literacy, that kind of thing. So there is a truth to this. However, I think that, so there are certain predictions that are right. However, I do not believe in a lot of things that Ray Bradbury believes. And also, I also don't really like the way that this book is written. Anyway, another thing that he is kind of right in his predictions is that healthcare would cost so much money in the United States. It's kind of funny that there's a procedure that happens in the book. Trigger warning, the wife gets her stomach pumped from psychiatric drugs. But yeah, so that procedure is $50, which would be an astronomical sum for somebody in the 1950s. I think that this would cost a lot more nowadays in the United States. Maybe that's the amount that it would cost in Sweden, something like that. Because a visit to the hospital would maybe be 40 crowns, and then maybe it would be around that. But in the US, I know that it would cost a lot more. So in a way, he predicted it, but not nearly as bad enough, because it's not only the state of inflation, but it's also the state of medical insurance and all that. So he was right on that point as well. It is also good that he does a critique of psychiatry, as a critique of therapy. Like the girl in the book is kind of forced to say certain things in therapy. And also psychiatry is kind of dumbing a wife down into a zombie by giving her pills to go to sleep and just like not caring about her actual mental health. However, I think that we agree in different ways. I think that is because Ray Bradbury is actually a 1950s man who does not believe mental health is a problem. I think that he's the kind of guy who would say, like, pull yourself by your bootstraps and like face the real world. While I am more of a proponent of like seeking care and building a community and that kind of thing. So we are on opposite ends there, but I do agree on that point. Another thing is kind of interesting how certain inventions were actually kind of true. Like there are ear thimbles, which are kind of like AirPods, and there are I don't know how much endoscopy was a thing then. Then there's a machine that like changes the blood, which actually is a real thing that actually exists. It's called an ECMO machine. However, it doesn't give you new blood, but it kind of rinses off your blood, kind of like a dialysis, but like it also pumps the blood. So if your heart has stopped, it can still pump the blood around and keep you alive. It's a very expensive procedure, but it is a thing that does exist. So kudos to him for these predictions. Another thing they predicted was kind of like a VR experience machine, or even this could be like social media or parasocial relationships or something. He has the wife in the book, she likes to be in her room where 3 of the walls have a TV, and she kind of talks to her family that are the people that are on the walls, and it's kind of like a interactive experience with a soap opera. So she has her own lines that she has to read, which is actually not as cool as what we have today, because today we can have even more interaction than like fixed lines that you have to read out. But this is her only way of finding happiness, is just like by doing this, because she isn't coupled with the outside world. But I found it really funny that they keep talking about having the 4th wall becoming also a TV. She wants to install a 4th TV on the 4th wall. And I thought that was kind of like the opposite of breaking the 4th wall kind of expression. So I found that funny. Now, as for the negatives, first of all, I don't understand why firefighters can't exist in a world where people are burning books, because other people can get hurt if the books are being burned. you know? There will still always be people to save. Also, forests can still burn, you know? And people might be in the forest, so you might need to, like, stop the forest fires. Even if the houses are supposed to all be fireproof in this world, doesn't mean that, like, other things can't catch fire. Also, I mean, these are nitpicky little things, but still, all these things together makes it really a contradiction. Another thing is that how did the main character learn how to read? I wonder. Maybe he was, maybe all this happened after he learned to read, like as a child. Like this new world system came because of after he had learned how to read. But he does know how to read. And yeah, and then there's also the fact that he talks about how literature classes have been replaced by film classes. It's like, that's sad that you're not allowed to take a literature class anymore. However, what's wrong with film class? You know, it's, you know, we have film classes for people who want to make films, or people who just are interested in the art of film and filmmaking and movies, photography. You know, there are all sorts of media that aren't books. But Ray Bradbury hates everything that has to do with a screen. Everything that has to do with TV or cinema is just stupidity. Well, you know, the only way to gain knowledge is through books, which is really untrue. Also, like, some people, this assumes that anybody who isn't book smart is, like, really not smart in any way, when actually people can be smart even though they aren't reading a lot of books, you know. There are many ways to be smart. Also, it's kind of funny, but he says that all classic art has been replaced by abstract art, which should make people more reflective, in my mind. You know, like, because abstract art, you need to actually think of what it represents, rather than the thing already being what it represents, you know? So I don't understand how that would be a loss of knowledge. But so he really dislikes abstract art. And, you know, I'm not, like, a huge fan of abstract art, but, like, I see that there is some kind of point to it. But he seems to think that abstract art is just stupid, and that it makes people think less rather than think more, which makes no sense, really. Another thing is that in order to get all these inventions, I guess that maybe some scientists need to read some books. You know, I would guess that the scientist needs to study and read books in order to, you know, this is a world that has a lot of knowledge, apparently. Even if the knowledge is used to make really awful machines, you know, it still is science. So it's like, in some ways he equates books with knowledge, but in other ways he says, no, the knowledge is contained somewhere else, which is like, it kind of defeats the purpose. Anyway, then we get into the portrayal of women. I mean, 1984 isn't perfectly perfect. It isn't flawless. It also isn't, like, great in its portrayal of women. However, Fahrenheit 451 is, like, really bad. Like, there are 2 women that have been introduced. I think, so far, at least, I don't know if there are other women that are introduced later on, but the wife and Clarice, who's a manic pixie dream girl who's 17 years old. She's a neighbor of the main character. And she has a face that he describes as fragile milk crystal, which is like gross. You know, the main character is much older than Clarice. And also, she's the one who starts making him question things, but she doesn't even ask any like really thought-provoking questions. And somehow his entire life he has believes that things are the way that they should be. And then like Clarice says, oh, but you know, it could, have you ever thought of this? And then he's like, oh no, his whole world has changed, you know? And it's like, wow, how much power she has over you. Like, what is this? Also, she has no personality. She is just a catalyst for the main character to change. She herself is nothing special, but she's extremely beautiful, and you're supposed to really know in detail how the main character feels about that. So the main character finds her beautiful, and that's like her main characteristic, which is gross because he is probably old enough to be her dad. Yeah, and he also hates his wife. And so he compares his wife to Clarice. And yeah, so he would rather have Clarice. Yeah, also, women are stupid and waste money is kind of the theory, is that his wife wants to install the fourth wall with the TV, and that is going to cost him a whole, like basically a whole year's worth of wages. And yeah, she doesn't think more about it because she's not the one who's making the money. Ironically, in this far distant future, women are still housewives. I mean, you know, women have always worked, but in the mind of a 1950s man, I guess that women are supposed to be housewives, even in their futuristic sci-fi novels. I guess. Anyway, yeah, also, the wife, the only reason that they don't have children is because the wife did not want them, and the main character is frustrated about that, which kind of implies that the only way for, like, that's another way that the wife is a bad wife, because she is so alienated from the world that she won't even say yes to having a kid in this awful, awful world, you know? They don't really talk about like, oh, how is life for children in this dystopian world? What are her reasons for not wanting a kid, you know? They don't go through that, so yeah. Anyway, that is about women. Then also, you know, I've said before about that Ray Bradbury is really against TV and also really against psychiatry. And we're against psychiatry for different reasons, and we're against, you know, so our views can intersect, but they're not the same, you know. And then there's the whole thing about the writing. The writing is the reason that I could not continue reading the book. I mean, these things are all inconsistencies, which make the book makes no sense, because, like, on one hand, books are knowledge, but on the other hand, it's not, and it's like, why are you doing this? What is the government's agenda? We don't really know. Maybe you're not supposed to know in the first 50 pages, I don't know. But like, I would like to know a little bit more about the structure of the whole system. I can understand that maybe you want an unreliable narrator. However, the unreliable narrator somehow comes up with really, really big metaphors. And it's like a lot of metaphors, too many metaphors, unnecessary metaphors. And it's like, well, wait, this person isn't, the main character isn't supposed to be somebody who reads, and also is supposed to be kind of a zombie and not really able to think on his own. So how come he is coming up with this amount of imagination. So first there's that, and then there's also the fact that the metaphors are so long, the sentences are so long, the style is bad. Okay, the style is bad. Like sometimes he'll like do some kind of stylistic choice with like short sentences, or like varying the pacing or doing these things. It's like, why? This makes no sense. What are you trying to convey? I do not get it, you know? And so it's like, yeah, I'm getting all worked up because it's like I can't really get it. And it's like, I wish I could, because apparently a lot of people are getting it, but I'm not. And then, I was taking things literally, or like, I was thinking, maybe it's like a metaphor. I don't know really. But if the metaphors were the real life of this strange future, it would have been a much better book. But somehow he manages to confuse you into like what is real and what is not, in a way that doesn't even make sense for the topic of the novel. So he talks about how the wife is like a mermaid, and that she's out on the shore, and that, she's alienated from things. I guess that's kind of the reasoning. And that how she screams, and how she's off on the shore. And it's like, okay, but all you could have said was that she had overdosed, And I find that would have been so much more impactful. And I understand that he wants to have this flowery language because he feels like that is the only way for this to be a literary novel, because that is kind of his way of seeing books. However, it's like really going against the purpose of this book. This book did not need flowery language. Rather, it should have focused a little bit more on the premise of, okay, what would a world without books look like? Rather than try to make a book literary without like actually putting any deep thought into what actually happens in it. I've read Proust, okay? I've read things that have a lot of flowery language, and I love metaphors, and I love, intense metaphors that go on for pages, but it's not right for this kind of book. It's not right for like a sci-fi short story kind of book. It doesn't hit right, and it feels bad inside of me, like I'm cringing the whole of me myself. Like, I don't know, it's read as if it was a teenager who wrote this book and had to write it for English class and shouldn't have gotten top marks for it. I don't understand. And I've tried for many days to get past page 53 of this book, and I cannot. So, I don't know if maybe there's something about some kind of secret code that I haven't understood. Like I was thinking, maybe Fahrenheit 451 is like backwards for 154 pages or something. But no, it's 158 pages also. Anyway, and like, I was like, what is it? And I've spent more time getting angry at this book than actually getting through the rest of this book, And it's like, I don't want to be that person who rages about something more time than I'm actually spending reading it. But something I needed to do. that is something I needed to do because I feel like not enough people are seeing this book the way that I am. I would like to know if anybody sees it in the way that I do, and if somebody has seen it in a good light. Maybe you can tell me like, oh, well, the best part of this book comes after page 53, or like, oh, you know, I read this book as a kid and it was quite simplistic, but I liked it because of this. But maybe I wouldn't like it as an adult. That's true. That could be a thing. Or maybe you like it as an adult because you've figured out something about this book that is unique that I haven't figured out, that I haven't talked about. Maybe you have some kind of rebuttal to my, and maybe it's just a question of taste. But I am confused about how so many people have a completely different opinion of this book than I do. And yeah, so tell me what you guys think. Should I keep reading Fahrenheit 451, or do you maybe have another book recommendation for me? Because now what I'm reading is Waiting for Godot by Beckett. I've actually read Fin de Partie in French for school, and I've always thought of reading Waiting for Godot, and I'm halfway through the play. It's quite short, and I think that this is much more worth it, even though, it's much less happens, but that's kind of the point of it. So that's what I'm going to read, but I'm going to be finished with this quite quickly, so I need something else to read. Anyway, have a great day, everybody. Bye.